This is the final part of the painting process. So I'm going to paint in some more background and the last little bit of the wood. And I'm going to talk you through the decisions that I make as I go along. So I'm just going to add a little bit more white to this final section of dark red with pink. So just painting white and then wetting the already dry paint, the pink paint, with the brush, and I'm just going to try and work those two into each other. So because it's watercolour, you can actually reactivate the dry paint by just sort of like twiddling the brush across, and it should sort of like, you know, blend in a little bit more easily. So I just want to achieve that nice gradient effect. And because it's not really blending that well, I'm just picking up a little bit more of this lighter pink. So I've got this sort of slightly lighter, it's more of a scarlet red, which I'm also going to use in the background with some white in some sections. So you'll see it is a little bit of a brighter pink when a brighter red when we come to use it. So all I'm doing here is paint the first section with some white, putting that bright pinky red on, and then using the brush to blend them into each other. So just going between the two colours so I get a little bit of a blend. If you see this up close, you can actually still see the brush marks, but from far away it looks a little bit more of a smooth gradient. And then the edge of that shape is just going to be a nice bright scarlety pink. Okay, so I finished all of my pink bits on the background, and I just thought that I could do with a little bit more, slightly different colour, but within the same colour family. So mixing this turquoise and the scarlety pink together, I'm making a purple, and I'm going to use this purple to create some gradient effects in the background as well. And because these are in the same colour family, obviously red and blue making purple, and so I've got my red, I've got my pink, my white, it's all quite harmonious. So I'm using colours that are near to each other on the colour wheel, and so these are all harmonising colours, so it still will blend quite nicely into my background. So painting a nice dark section, and then I'm just going to go a little bit lighter, add a little bit more white to this purple to make it slightly lighter. I'm going to paint the whole of the band, that shape there, in the solid lighter purple. So I'm still painting in a tonal way, but I'm just painting some sections a little bit flatter. So I've just zoomed you in so you can see a little bit more clearly. So trying to get rid of any brush marks as best I can, but remembering that this is watercolour paint and it is pretty transparent. So just adding a little bit more white into my colour, and then I'm just going to try and paint that as smoothly as I can. Obviously this is speeded up. Okay, so that's probably about the best I'm going to get. Okay, then this section, the section I've just pointed to, is also going to be purple, but I decided to actually paint this bottom section purple because it just basically needs a little bit of purple at the bottom. It would look quite strange if there was purple in 2/3 of the image and not at the bottom. So it's about balancing the image out a little bit, so visually it looks a little bit more balanced. So I've overpainted that with purple, and then I'm going to do a purple to white gradient behind the violin handle. I've painted it dark and I've turned it upside down because it was at the wrong angle for me to paint it neatly. So I always like to rotate the piece of paper and work in a direction that I'm comfortable with. So I'm doing exactly the same thing. I've painted some dark purple, I've added some more white into that colour, mixing it on my palette to cleaning off my brush, picking up a little bit more of the pale purple, and then just painting that so that it creates a smooth gradient again. It's exactly what I've done over the course of the painting, so nothing different, just going lighter and lighter as I go on. And then I'm going to paint this section with some more wood grain. So just mixing my brown again. So remembering we've got red and yellow making orange, and then I'm mixing a little bit of black into the colour, which is going to give me my brown. Not too much black because I don't want it to be too dark. So what I'm first of all going to do is the same technique I showed you before, and I'm just adding some dashes, some random dashes to make this wood grain effect. So some thin, some thick, just using the very tip of the brush, and I'm going to put that one layer of that pattern on, and then I'm going to do a wash of colour on top, and a thin wash of colour will still allow the wood grain effect to show through. So just going to finish off adding those lines. Okay, there we go. And I'm just now going to mix a slightly warmer tone to paint over, and using the same brush but using the side of the brush to create a flatter surface area, I'm very smoothly adding a layer of that colour on top, and you can still see the wood grain through. And the final thing I'm going to do is just add a little bit of shadow onto the wood just to give it a bit more of a dimension. And the final thing I'm going to do is just paint this last section in with purple, starting light, just using what's on my palette. And then I decided to go a little bit darker, so mixing some black into my purple, trying to get a neat edge. And then just picking up some purple and just going in to blend those together. And again, you'll see that I do rotate the paper because I'm finding it quite difficult to sort of blend it at that angle. So I'm just going to turn the paper round in order to actually finish off that last little bit of blending. Picking up some white. And this is where I decide that I really need to turn that paper around so I can actually blend it at the right angle for me. And then just trying to blend that little bit, those two colours into each other. Okay. And so there's actually one last thing I decided to have a little experiment with, and that's to add some black line. Now, I don't want to add black line to the whole of this, but there are some areas that could do with a little bit of tidying up. So in your painting, if you're not confident that you can draw a straight line with a paintbrush, I would suggest use a black coloured pencil or maybe an oil pastel, but don't go too heavy-handed because we don't want the whole thing to be outlined in black. But I just thought that some of these newspaper areas needed a little bit of more definition. So I did actually draw some lines on with the with the paintbrush. So this is all done in real time. I didn't go too mad though, because I didn't want to make the painting look too heavy. So I didn't actually do too much of that. So this is more or less the painting finished. I've not decided what to do with the newspaper, but I think you can see from what I've shown you more or less the process that you are going to have to go through to create this Cubist artwork. So I'm quite happy with my colour choices, I'm happy with my wood effect, and quite pleased with the finished outcome. So just finishing off this last little bit. And this is the final bit. I might actually add a little bit of a brown into the top right hand corner, I think, just because it could do with it. But that's the end of that process. And this is exactly what you'll be doing in class to create your Cubist painting.